That's an exaggeration.
I sent you guys a document. It's blank. It's blank. When you open it, don't forget, it's supposed to be blank. Oh. Hi there. But it's at the very top of your inbox. If you go ahead and open that for me, we're going to do today. I don't know if you've noticed yet. I imagine the more astute among you may have already. This unit is way shorter than our first unit. There's a couple of reasons for that, but the only one I'm going to bring to your attention today is this. I've said it a couple times. The process we undertake when we write this paper, it's super similar to the previous paper. So much so that I've actually noticed more than a few of you accidentally kind of critiqued the social dilemma at times. You would talk about how you thought the social dilemma was doing a good job. Basically, that's you noticing that the first paper isn't super argumentative, right? And that's your brain going, we need to make an argument. And so you kind of critiqued it anyway. All that is to say, we take like one more step in this paper. We're critiquing, not just performing rhetorical analysis. I think we're all capable, so we don't spend as much time practicing that stuff. That's my way of saying, this is the week we're really going to start moving into paper mode. So the homework that was due today, the 3 signs and elements, some of you wrote about Rogan, some of you wrote about Oliver. Those of you who wrote about Oliver, I noticed a real preponderance of Monica Lewinsky notes. And it's like, we should talk about her. First of all, the interview is like 10 minutes of a 30-minute video, so it's significant. And also, it's fucking Monica Lewinsky. Like, some of you at least know who that is. Like, that's kind of a big deal. It was kind of a big deal. So I wanted to do that. Now, I haven't actually skipped ahead. I'm going to do that first. No, thank you. And you're not going to give me any. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, so anybody watching at home, I'll give you the timestamps first. The section of the Monica Lewinsky interview we're going to look at here, it starts at 1503, okay, and it ends at 1932. So anywhere thereabouts, if you want to follow along. Because it's YouTube, YouTube won't let me post it to YouTube for some reason, so I have to cut out the part that we watch. What I'm interested in, now I said already, the interview's 10 minutes long, we're not going to watch the whole interview, but we're going to watch 3 or 4 minutes of it. What I'd like to do, similar process to what we've undertaken thus far, anything you notice, anything that stands out. It can be something someone says. There's a couple good quotations in this section, okay? It can be something that happens, or the way something looks, or facial expression. It can be whatever. I had somebody email me over the weekend asking, like, can we do something physical? And I think they meant like a visual aspect, and I was like, yes. Yeah. I mean, so anything at all that strikes you as potentially interesting, potentially significant, maybe jot that down or make a mental note. And then, if you feel so inclined, which is my way of saying feel inclined, what's the effect of that? Do you have a critique of that effect or that strategy, right? We're going to try to do this today. We're going to try to move from your homework into paragraphs. It's going to be fun. We'll finish my notes. I'm going to listen to all of yours. Excellent, excellent note. I'm going to keep this up in the off chance we want to look back at something. I'm assuming that's not going to be necessary, but what I'm more interested in now, at some point, I should actually check the format. Yep. I want to move to thinking about making a paragraph. So no pressure, we just have this blinking cursor up here that we're going to address at some point. Before we do that, things you guys noticed. Just anything at all. Anything that stood out to you as potentially interesting, like we've done for weeks.
They were very close, like in places.
They were. Actually, yeah, it's hard to appreciate from our vantage point, but I guess they're a little bit askew, like one's that way, one's that way. Because like, I kept looking at their feet.
Yeah.
They're very, what about that? That's all right. Do you have something else?
No, I was going to say something.
Go for it.
But I think when they, because obviously it's a pretty standard format for an interview when they go.
Yeah.
They have the close shot of each of the people and then
Yeah.
a wider shot of both of them.
Yeah.
When they sit that close together, that wide shot is not, there's not this like chasm between them, so they're like more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're kind of heading toward like a pretty easy early read of that, like physical proximity. It lends the interview an air of what?
It's more relaxed, maybe.
Yeah. I'll say more. Would it be fair to say like more intimate?
Yeah.
And again, that has certain connotations. Some people misunderstand what that word really means. It doesn't mean romantic. We just associate with that word because it means closeness, physical proximity with like an emotional one. And again, I don't know that I would even call them friends, but it's a friendly interview, right? It is a little more relaxed. It's for sure less formal than almost probably any other interview she's ever had, for sure, right? And we could argue rhetorically that's reflected in their positioning, right? Well, now we got to think about, would we critique that at all? We don't have to yet. Hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's leave that alone for a second. I want to raise a couple more options here. What's other things you guys noticed? Yes, ma'am.
When you like started cussing like out of the blue,
Yeah.
in the interview, I feel like at first she was kind of uptight, and then like she started loosening up, and she started like.
She threw a fuck in there or something. Asshole. She said asshole at one point. Yeah. What about that? And then, by the way, I've taught this class for a while, but you change texts all the time. I used to teach a book for the first unit that the guy curses in a good bit. I love talking about cursing. It is such a strong rhetorical artifact. And they don't do it at all in The Social Dilemma, so I'd love to have this conversation now. He says fucking monster at one point. Let's talk about that one. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I feel like it changes the tone of the interview. Like it doesn't.
For sure.
Like I will just noticing that she's more used to more serious interviews about that one topic. I feel like it made them more relaxed and made them more comfortable.
There's, again, much less formal. As soon as somebody throws out a fuck, everything gets way less formal. Right? It does. It does. It's and look, there are certain times and places, we're talking about code switching at this point, that it's like not appropriate or whatever. But if you're not sure, perhaps, of the atmosphere, or if you think it's going to be one thing, a very easy way to communicate that it's actually this other thing is to throw out that fuck or whatever. I think he gives us a couple, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's at least 2. Let's talk about cursing. It'll be fun. So, this is a little quicker than I wanted to do it, and we can go back to this part of the conversation if you like. I know you're having a lot of fun. But for just a moment, I want to think about how we could possibly start building a body paragraph. To begin with, we have this blank sheet of paper. This is what you always have, right? You got that cursor kind of taunting you. At least that's how it feels to me. How do you start writing a body paragraph? What's the first thing you need?
Words. Oh.
Yep.
Topic.
It's the introduction.
Topic sentence.
You also shouldn't start with a thesis. You also, for the same reason, actually, you don't want to start with a thesis. I always teach you guys, do not start with a topic sentence. And this could feel like a trick, so I want to be very clear. So much of your experience writing is in-class essays. And so, in class, we have 40 minutes for 2 pages. Go. Your brain goes, shit! And then you write from start to finish, right? That's how it works. There's good reason for that in that setting. What we talk about is actual writing. And you got scads of time if you want it, more than 40 minutes at least. And for that, you do not write start to finish, or at least you should not a lot of the time. In this case, just like you shouldn't start with a thesis, don't start with a topic sentence. Start with something else. What's something else we can start with? That's an introduction as well.
Just some,
Oh, fuck me. All right.
just rough points about what we're going to talk about.
Real quick. Write a body paragraph. Write a body paragraph. Okay. It's okay.
We can discuss specifically what
Is
we're
this like
talking
a
about. So
question that has the
scene.
correct answer? Or
Yes.
like, one singular
If-
preposition?
Yes. If you wanted to talk specifically what we're looking at in a body paragraph, how might we do that?
You have to analyze something. Like, you have to like test
Oh, thank God. Yes. Okay. You start with the text. You always start with the text. You may have notions. You may have some burgeoning analysis, right? But start with the text. In this case, cursive. Let's talk about cursive. The only one I remember, and you guys, if you have more to add or if I get something wrong, please let me know. But the one I remember especially was right? Oliver says that at one point.
Can you make the text so wrong?
What happened?
He's an effing monster.
Oh yeah, sorry.
He says asshole. He says gold star.
Oh, that's right, fucking monster. You're right. Good catch. Is that big enough?
Sure.
Okay. So first thing we gotta do, we gotta set up this evidence, and we may add asshole to that. I don't want to say why, but that'd be good. Let's start with Oliver first. How do we contextualize this quotation? Like, how does it happen? What's the scene we're looking at? We can start there. Interview.
In Oliver's interview with Monica Lewinsky,
I think that's right.
yeah.
During his interview with Lewinsky,
Oh, never mind. It's a Y.
I always never remember. So.
Not that Polish.
It's entirely possible they are, and they like changed it. You know what I mean? One of those.
Okay.
Anyway, during this interview, okay, now we got to get more specific. What are they discussing to arrive at that quotation?
People's like decision about how they want to portray themselves online.
Good. And they're throwing around terms like persona.
Right.
Let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll write it down because I want to make sure we're on the same page. What do they mean when they talk about online persona? That's just a plural persona, by the way.
The anonymity that comes with being able to just be like
Yeah.
insane.
Whoever.
Like,
Well,
like-
to potentially be insane,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
could
yeah.
also be some version of yourself that's like, you know, decent or whatever. But yeah, you guys have been on the internet before.
Yeah.
You've run into like sensible people, right? Or if you've ever played like an online shooter, you know how 75% of the people out there just want to crouch on your face, you know, like everybody does, like a normal thing. So yeah, during the interview with Lewinsky, the I don't know how we don't automatically fix them. Making the point. All right, real quick. I added an S for the sentence to make sense. You guys understand that, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no, okay. To show that I changed, because he does not say monsters. He says monster. This is pretty in the weeds, but go with it. You add brackets. I added the S. Importantly, it doesn't change the sense of the quotation, right? The quotation is the same. But to make it readable with how our language works, it needs an S, and you show that you've changed it with brackets. Also, I actually don't have a citation. Does anybody know why?
Is it because you've already mentioned?
Twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the guy twice. And in this case, he happens to be the one that we would cite, so we're good. We don't need one. I'll say this too. When in doubt, go ahead and cite. If you're ever not sure, cite. But in this case, we don't need one. What's up?
Do we cite this video like how?
He's asking if we would just put it in
Oh,
the parentheses,
Yeah.
like just
compared to,
Oliver.
like how we did it for the film. Like
Yeah, it would be Oliver in parentheses.
that's what I thought.
Yeah. And in Rogan's case, it would be Rogan. inference to.
Regardless of whether it was.
Yes, because again, the thing to remember, you're only ever citing the text.
Right, not the physical people.
Yeah. So like in the social dilemma's case, it's always Orlowski, even though like 20 people, speak in that movie. Yeah, you're always citing the text. All right. So here is our evidence, and it's pretty good. I'm gonna make it a little bigger. Now the question that we started going down this road. Jasmine? Okay. We started going down this road already, and we can add to it potentially. But for now, fucking monster. What element of that quotation were we most interested in? Probably the curse. What about it? What are some things we started to say about that? What does it do rhetorically? There's a couple of things.
Just changes the mood, I guess.
Okay, let's talk about how. Like the atmosphere, the complexion of the conversation. How does it do? Oh, yes, ma'am.
It kind of helps it transition from like a formal interview into like a conversation between friends more so.
Okay, you're skipping steps, but that's okay. So baby steps first. It for sure does the thing that both of you were talking about, which that's what we're saying, right? To begin with, because you have to think about expectations. I think Maya, if I'm not mistaken, said something about like what Lewinsky may have thought, and you may have said this. A couple people said this. What her expectations might have been going into the interview, right? Which is something to think about. But I think we're on firmer ground when we think about what our expectations are. You get a dude in a suit and a woman who is dressed rather well as well. Think about interviews you've seen or conceived of, I suppose. Normally you would expect a level of formality. And this quickly dispels that. It says, it's not going to be quite like those. It's going to be a little bit different. And that's all we've said up to this point, is that language changes the tone, which is cool. Now we can start thinking about, you were saying more like friends, is that right? Let's think about this a little bit. Does it do that? I'm honestly asking. Like, do we, because we want to be careful with our language here, do we get the sense that they're friends, or like, how do we define whatever that relationship is?
I just see it more as like a friendly conversation.
Okay. Well, again, because the point I'm making here is, because it can happen sometimes, I don't know that you want to go so far that like they vacation together, right? Like they're not, but you are right, if we're defining that tone, it's friendlier. Yeah, okay. Something like old time. Come on, dude. This lack of formality instills a friendlier atmosphere. Is there anything more we want to say about that atmosphere? I'm honestly asking. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
I feel like it's a lot more, I mean, not to say that they weren't being honest before, but it definitely feels more genuine and more honest throughout.
Due to that,
It's like more comfortable.
Yeah, both of them kind of like sit back in their chairs.
that's okay. All right. Wait, no, you're right. All right. Which communicates an openness fewer is incurred. You said they're like lean back in their chairs.
I mean, like,
We're trying to describe the
figuratively speaking, yeah, they kind of become more relaxed, and you can tell that they're able to be more open and honest, especially as they continue to use more relaxed language.
We just have like a quick addendum, like a little injection of like 2% more evidence to say it's not only what they're saying to each other, but also how they're seated. And we haven't talked about how close they are. You want to be careful you don't include too much evidence, but just a little bit is okay. Just like right here, like, this does it too. Like this communicates that message also. Cool. Okay. Now, well, I want to try to go down this road a little bit further if we can. I'm just interested. Do you guys have any more thoughts on the atmosphere we're talking about, the kind of friendly tone? We said it makes it seem like they're more honest or open with each other and therefore with us, right? Any more thoughts on that before we turn this a little bit? Spectacular. All right. Well, let's critique that. Super generally speaking, is that like a good thing, bad thing? Do you think it makes whatever arguments they might be making in this video more or less successful, basically? The atmosphere we're talking about here. Tone. Does it help or does it hurt?
It helps.
Okay. Why do you think so?
All right. I was trying to figure out how to word it, like, at least, okay, but the honesty that is, or at least the appearance of honesty, because it's such a personal issue to Lewinsky, it kind of, it allows us to see, obviously that's the point of the interview, is like what the actual effects of public shaming in someone's life. But you can definitely see, it's almost like talking to a friend. Not I wouldn't put that in the paper.
No, I understand what you're saying. Okay, well, all right, man. What's the very first thing you said? Could we start in a really good place?
Good question. The honesty that...
you said like the appearance of honesty.
Yeah, the appearance of honesty.
Because, well, to be totally fair, we can't know.
Yeah.
You can't ever really know. All right, now what did we say after that? The apparent honesty in this clip, help me out. All right, you said it. I should be able to hang on to it better.
I had a good question. I can't even remember,
Damn.
so it's okay.
It was something like, I mean, obviously it encourages us to like believe them, but I mean, we got that with honesty already. Well, not only, the point you were making, this is what I really wanted to drill down on a little bit. You said something about, I mean, you said this, and then you said I wouldn't write it that way in the paper, that like we're almost on friendly terms with her.
I guess you could say it includes the audience almost.
It does. We can start with that. That's not bad. I do that. I'm just forcing us to say more. Moreover, additionally, also, I think we can go further than that. It doesn't just include the audience, right? This friendly atmosphere, the sense of honesty between these two people that we're kind of almost just like peeking in on, basically. what might that, I'm trying to be real careful, I don't just give this to you, what might that, how does that affect how you see Lewinsky, I guess is what I'm saying. Because you were almost getting at this when you were talking.
Humanizes her.
Yeah. Why?
We have this like mental image of maybe what she's been associated with for so long that.
Yeah, well, she has a scandal, as she said at one point, named after her.
Yeah.
And at some point, like, she just becomes the headline as opposed to a person. And I cut you off, I'm sorry.
So yeah, so it's just to like see her as just like a person and being able to explore how her personality is now interacting with.
And how that human being was affected by this stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Moreover, I'm going to force you guys to do this again. All I'm trying to get us to is, we started with really good evidence, and by the way, you'll notice it's 2 words, and we didn't even talk about one of them. Let's talk about tone, talked about what that tone does to the interview, talked about what that change to the interview does to the viewer, and now we've kind of gone far enough down the rabbit hole that we're thinking about what all of that does to our perspective when it comes to Lewinsky. And all I'm doing here at the end is trying to force us to say, what does any of that do in relation to some part of Oliver's argument? It doesn't have to be his whole argument. It's a 30-minute video, right? But I've kind of given you guys a little bit, I guess, of a hint or maybe a direction to take. But at various points, he talks about, humanity, like people being at the heart of these scandals. Does anybody remember kind of what the gist of that might be? As you all yawn at me. But anyway, what's his deal with like human beings being at the heart of public shaming?
It's something that you oftentimes forget.
Yeah, and what's the result of forgetting that?
It makes people feel like they can pile on even harder because there's nobody at the end. They don't see that person at the other end of it.
Yeah. And if you don't realize you're attacking a person and that it's going to affect them like a person, the results can be disastrous. Yeah? Okay. Can we talk about that here? How does anything we just said maybe address that aspect of his larger argument? If that makes sense. How does having us see Monica Lewinsky as a person help or hinder that aspect of his argument that humanity needs to be considered, basically?
By bringing her humanity and personality back to the forefront, it makes us think about the ultimate effects, especially in this case where we're seeing her at a point that she's already been able to kind of cope with all this stuff.
Yeah, it's like 20 years later.
Yeah, so you're able to see kind of some of the aggregate effect of all the stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
So it's pointing out that like she still has to go on living her life after all that stuff happens.
Yeah, she has to continue after that. How awful must that have been?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In short, I think we said forces already. Asks the audience to All right, I want to be really forceful with our critique. It sounds like a positive one. Is that fair to say? Yes. We're like positively critique. In a sentence or two, how do we basically say that having us appreciate Monica Lewinsky's humanity is good for the argument he's trying to make when it comes to public shaming? How does it help? And you already kind of did this, but we got to do it like one more time. Why is it a good thing? You'll try it again? Because you did do it.
I guess talking about, like, loosely tying it back to the online persona thing, like recognizing the humanity of this person who's been affected by this is kind of the antithesis of someone adopting, like,
that anonymous,
like, that anonymous, like, something being terrible, and so.
No, that's cool. That's pretty good. So, like, something like, excellently, I'm getting pretty cheesy at the end. I'll even end with a cliche. Okay. What I want you to notice here at the end, when in doubt, especially in a paper like this, if you're not sure if you're critiquing, which can happen. I mean, again, we were super in the weeds at one point. I wasn't even sure if we were critiquing, right? We're just kind of figuring it out. Give us a modifier. Give us a judgment. He does a great job. He does a poor job. He does okay. Now, you can be in the middle. That's still a critique. It's not great to be okay, right? But it's not bad either. It's kind of. But right here toward the end, if nothing else, you got to make sure to critique whatever it is we're talking about in the text. All right. Last thing we got to do to this body paragraph. We have our evidence. We got so much analysis, which is awesome. What's the last thing we need? Good. Because the point I always try to make to you guys is, you may have an idea, but until you really chase that thing, you're not going to know what your argument is. And now we do. What's our argument? If you have to reread real quick, go ahead. But what's our argument in this paragraph? What are we trying to say about Oliver here? Oh, yeah.
Oliver humanizes Monica Lewinsky through the use of his language.
To be fair, we probably, because that sounds like he's like, you fucking bitch! Like, it's not. Which might humanize her, because as an audience, we'd be like, he's gone too far. But again, to fully make our argument, and we may change the phrasing a little bit, I'm kind of just having fun, we need to make sure there's critique in there, because that's the assignment. So we have what he does and what the effect is, which is good. And we've already said that's a good thing. So right here at the top, we got to find one more good way to say why that's good, why that helps his argument. Why do you think that is? Here at the top.
Making, you could say it makes her, well, you rather their conversation and interaction more relatable, or
he humanizes her. Instead of at, that's the really aggressive part. With her, see how different that is? Words matter. You get cursed at. Like if I curse at you, I'm in trouble. But if I curse with you, We're buddies. Fuck, right? Like, it feels good. By cursing with her, which, I think we said this already. I really like this verb. Bolsters. Cool. Is the topic sentence perfect? No. It's really good though. And it does what we need to do. It's pretty specific. You gave us the first half, which is pretty specific and pretty concise, which I appreciate. And then we get that critique in the second half. We have evidence that we get to quickly. It's not overlong. And we have so much analysis. I cannot underscore for you guys enough. And I know I've said this before. Analysis is where you make your grade. Sometimes it can be hard to tell the difference in your position. I appreciate that. But think of it this way. The easiest way to know if you're not performing analysis is if you're summarizing. So for instance, if you write me a body paragraph where you're talking about how we should be careful when we publicly shame, how we should appreciate someone's humanity, a lot of should statements especially, whose argument is that?
Oliver.
It's Oliver's argument. That's summary. Now, of course, if you're doing that very quickly to give me context for like a quotation or something specific, and then you go on at length about the effects of whatever those arguments are, that's your argument. Then you can critique it, and then you're gold, okay? But that's what you gotta do. The trap some of you fell into on the first paper, which we'll talk about at the end of the week, because I'm getting close to done, is that you're summarizing the text, right? That's not argument, that's a book report. Questions about any of this? Cool.
10:17.
Ooh, 10:45, get out here?
Yeah.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna turn on some lights. All right, what I would like you guys to do is work a little bit. For next time, you have an opposing arguments assignment that, I'll explain it at the end, don't worry about that too much right now. What I would like you to do, what I would do if I was in your position, maybe work on a body paragraph. Like for instance, if you did the homework, and I know some of you did, but if you even considered it at all, or if you've considered it now that we've been doing this, you could take one of those. You could take a specific element from one of the texts. Do this. Set it up, like we talk about evidence. Do your best to analyze it rhetorically. You could do that for a couple sentences. You don't have to critique out of the gate. And then offer me some kind of critique. Does it make the argument in the text more or less successful? And then talk to me about why. Write me a body paragraph in the future that I'll see. Go for it. We'll start to wrap this up. I believe we've done this at least once before. I said then, but I like to remind you. If you're actually in a good place mentally, like I had some momentum and he made it stop, we have the room for about another 10 minutes. You can just work. I'm gonna let us all go here in a second, but you can stay if you want. Also, it's been bugging me all class. The like oranges brown we were talking about, that's what ashtrays were like when I was a kid. And it just struck me, it's so you wouldn't see like all the gross like tar. That just, odd choice. I know you didn't make it, but I keep looking at it like, ew. Anyway, yeah, I know. For next time, we have a thing, I wish I could speak. We have a thing called opposing arguments. Honestly, I think it's a really helpful exercise. I could also call it devil's advocate, okay? It's a discussion board. The idea is you take one of your arguments, for instance, ideally, whatever you were just working on, you know, if you got nothing else, you got that. But you take one of your arguments that you feel okay about, one of your critiques, you very briefly, and I mean 2-3 sentences max, give us the gist of whatever that argument is. I'm thinking about this, I think it does this, I think it helps make the text successful or not successful because blah, like 3 sentences, right? Do that. And then for the rest of the discussion post, you do your best to consider the opposite position from whatever you thought. It's just a helpful exercise. So for instance, when you brought up cursing, I don't know what it was, but the way you brought it up, at least part of this is due to like hearing for years from people that I very much disagree with that like cursing is bad. I thought you were gonna go down that road. I was gonna be like, oh, I gotta do this now. But that's possible, right? In all the ways that we said fucking monster helps kind of make the argument he's trying to make, right? I think that's true. Because it's an argument, that means it's worth proving. It requires explanation. That also means there are possible counterpoints that you gotta at least consider. It's possible him saying fucking monster for sure changes the tone, but there's a perspective out there that feels like there's a reason interviews are more formal, right? And they are discussing an important topic and this is not what I believe, by the way, this is sophistry. You can look that up later, don't worry about it. But there's an idea that it kind of waters down his argument, right? He damages his argument, he damages his credibility by not taking the interview seriously, basically. Again, that's not a position I really buy at all. But it's not totally illegitimate either. It's an argument you could make. So all I'm saying, in this discussion post that you make, that's due for next time, do your best to take an opposite position. Is it something you'll believe by the time you're done? No, not necessarily. Although occasionally I've had students tell me, like, yeah, I did that and I realized that I like that one more. That I totally felt that way. And I was like, okay, man, you can change your mind. But bear in mind it's a discussion post, so you also need to respond to your classmates, that whole business. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys Wednesday. Thank you.